This is WCCX Waukesha 104.5 FM, and this is D&D with B&D, saying a lot to nobody. Yes, Bradley, we've done this for our entire season now, and we've not once messed up the song we made up. Not one time. I almost did today. I almost did a couple times, but we've always gotten it correctly, thankfully.
Thankfully.
So I don't think a lot of people are going to probably be listening tonight, at least from Carroll, because everybody's studying right now and doing their own stuff.
You mean everyone's...
I don't think anyone even from, like, other schools that I know is listening much.
They aren't studying right now. They're having breakfast upstairs.
What?
All night breakfast is happening right now.
Oh, I don't keep
literally
up.
until 11.
I don't keep up.
It's
with
the
Carroll
most popular
events.
thing Carroll has, except for bingo. This place is insane, I swear.
I don't keep up with Carroll events whatsoever. Yeah, I actually do keep up with them more during exam times than usually because they have the dog petting therapy. So.
Ooh, is that like reading day?
I don't know if they are doing it this semester, but I know usually they do.
They betray us like
but
that.
Anyway, moving on. Yeah, I don't know if anyone's listening. I don't know if Rory's listening. Apparently, Dad is listening. He just texted me saying so.
Okay.
So I guess someone loves me. But besides that, I'm not sure that anyone else.
We have our normal audience.
Reed is listening.
We have our normal audience of nobody. That is your name.
Nobody.
If there
exactly.
are people.
By the way, this is the first show. I've gotten so like, what's the word I'm looking for?
I don't know. I don't see your brain.
Used to all of this that I'm not even wearing the headphones anymore.
So
I don't see the point. What do they do for you?
So I can make sure that we're heard.
Okay.
Basically.
It just I don't know. It muffles everything for me, and I feel like I have to talk louder then when I have them on because I can't hear myself as well, and I feel like I'm shouting at the audience probably.
You're fine.
The audience of nobody, so it doesn't really matter. But anyway, so today we are talking about something very core to Dungeons and Dragons. Now, last week we said that we were going to talk about dungeons today. Unfortunately,
exams are a thing.
People were making fun of us out there.
Excuse me.
Come on. Why would you make fun of the nerds in here? Gosh. Unfortunately, we decided to cut down the last two things into one thing because we feel like taking a nap after exams at the end of next week. So we're not going to be airing next week. So instead of doing Dungeons today, we are cutting to the chase to the best part of Dungeons and Dragons.
The best.
The very heart of the entire game, which is the dragons. Yes. Now, in Dungeons and Dragons, there are many types of dragons. There are wyverns and dragon turtles and all sorts of different things. But the standout amongst all of them are the true dragons, which are the different colored dragons. There are 10 true dragons, at least in base Dungeons and Dragons. I have more in my world, and some old editions and like side products have additional dragons as well. But today we're just going to talk about the 10 main ones. The 10 main dragons. Bradley, you are not paying attention to me at all, and I'm
literally looking at the thing.
Literally, no one is listening tonight to me, and you're not even listening to me. I should just go home.
I'm literally
apparently.
pulling up the plan that you make every time. I use it on my phone.
The 10 dragons are split up into two different types. There are metallic dragons and there are chromatic dragons. Now, metallic is dragons that appear in different shades of, metallic colors. And the chromatic dragons are just like shades of colors like red, blue, black, white.
Yeah, more primary colors.
Primary colors, yeah, well.
And then white.
Red, blue, green, black, white. The primary colors, correct. No.
I'm not an art major.
Forget yellow. Now the two different dragons are split the way they are because they are separated into essentially what is the most powerful good dragons and the most powerful evil dragons. Now, of course, in your world, you do not have to make all of the chromatic dragons, which are usually evil types. You don't have to make them all evil. that's not written anywhere that you have to do that. In fact, later editions usually say that they're usually evil. If you take a dragon from infancy and raise it, it probably won't become evil because no race or creature has ever shown signs of just being all evil.
Though its genetics might lean towards a certain thing.
Yes, it might lean towards a certain disposition. But anyways, like in my world, all the chromatic and metallic dragons can be any alignment. There is no structure of it. I mean, they're generally their alignment in the main game, but they can be anything. Which is a question for you guys coming up with the dragon coming up. But something that's important about all the different types of dragons is they all have the true dragons all have a breath attack. They are all very intelligent enough to be able to communicate with all sorts of different beings. A lot of them can also shapeshift into humanoid forms.
In 5e, that's all metallic.
Yeah, in 5e it's metallics. In 5e, though, you can kind of get around that by giving the dragons spells that polymorph them into humans or stuff like that. In my world, all the dragons can transform into humanoid form. It's a weird thing in all of the editions of Dungeons and Dragons where metallic dragons are a little bit more powerful than the chromatics because they're the good dragons. I would challenge dungeon masters out there to say, screw that, don't be cowards, make your evil dragons just as powerful as your good dragons. That's the way my world works. Alright, so we'll start off, we'll go into the dragons based on power scale, basically. We'll start with the lowest power...
The
least
small
powerful
boys.
to the most powerful.
To the small
starting
boys.
with a metallic dragon and then switching to a chromatic and so on and so forth.
Yes.
So our first dragon today are the lovely brass dragons, which are probably, at least in the main game, my favorite of the metallic dragons, even though they're the least powerful. The brass dragons are fairly basic in terms of dragon structure. They have a fire breath like your average dragon would. They are the weakest of the metallics, like I said. They are... So a lot of the metallic dragons have this, like, pridefulness where they kind of think they're a superior race to all humanoids, which I kind of feel like, personally, to be honest, that's not really a good trait, and you shouldn't make your good dragons think they're better than everyone else, but whatever. In my world, they don't think that necessarily, or at least not all of them do. But it makes sense. I mean, they're giant, super intelligent, super wise beings that can breathe fire, fly, and destroy everything in their path. But in counter to the other metallic dragons, brass dragons are very friendly to humanoids and are probably of any of the dragons in the main game less likely to be think themselves superior. I have more stuff here. What do you have to say about brass dragons right now?
Yeah, brass dragons, they're like the chillest of dudes of all the dragons.
They're very social. They love to talk.
Like, they will, if you don't want to have a conversation with them, they will literally put you to sleep, wake you up, so that you have a conversation with them.
They will literally get annoyed and stop you from leaving so they can still talk to you. They're kind of like me in that way. No, I'm just kidding.
And all of them have, like, different breath attacks?
All dragons have layers, and literally the central point of a brass dragon's lair is usually the conversation hall. Come on, Reed. Please, not like me usually. All metallic dragons also have a secondary breath attack, which they use. And for instance, you talked about it. The brass dragon has a sleep gas.
Yeah.
Most of the metallic dragons have a secondary breath attack, so they can, like, non-lethally try to deal with situations. And the brass dragons is a sleep breath. They are very odd-looking when in flight because their wings kind of trail all the way to the back of their tail, so they have, like, a triangular pattern wing shape.
Like a flying squirrel?
Yeah. Kind of like that.
Oh, that's great.
They have big crests on their head. For like storytelling purposes, you can use brass dragons a lot with like Middle Eastern type storytelling, particularly since they have some ties in there in that they can summon genies at later levels, which is an interesting quality that they got. They live in deserts, so that's another part that makes them good for Middle Eastern type storytelling. They like to cultivate people and civilizations around them just by kind of being social with everyone. A lot of the metallic and chromatic dragons have counters to them in their chromatic forms. A brass dragon's counter is a blue dragon, which we'll talk about later. But the brass dragons, let's see, do I have anything else about them? No, I think that's about it.
Another thing about dragons is all of them have lairs that they like keeping treasure in, typically. Right. Brass dragons, how they do it is they just keep it in the sand somewhere hidden.
Yeah.
They don't really care going there too often.
Yeah, there are different levels of interest in treasure. All dragons have a lot of treasure, but brass dragons don't seem to care as much as other dragons in some senses.
Also, they put it like in a random spot, and they know where it is. Yeah, it's actually
a really good spot for treasure. Just put it
in the
wherever and remember. But they are chaotic good, so they are very interpretive on what the good option is to help other people. Now, I am going to give a little bit of an add-on for anyone who wants to like change some things about dragons. In my world, I have little add-ons I've put onto all of the dragons, and so I just am going to mention them as like an example piece. So like for brass dragons, my add-on thing is I added in a little or lore where they often become mercenaries, and Hiron is mercenaries. But they do that so they can have like adventuring groups essentially to partner up with and become friends with. So they're my favorite metallic dragon from the main series because they're essentially just like the friendly dragon.
I have a more fun.
They're not douches or anything. Or pompous. They're just friendly dragons.
They're the chill guys.
So now going over to the chromatic side, we have our first evil dragon, which is the white dragon.
These are the least
theme for Christmas.
Yeah, the least social dragons. For sure.
Yes, in main D&D, that is definitely true.
So white dragons, they are in like tundra and snowy climates, and they are very lonely.
They're like they keep to themselves. They have their own territory that they really don't want anyone else in. They're very spiteful of anyone coming into their zone. They don't even really they mate. Like once, and then
they leave.
They leave
after
and never speak to that mate again.
Yep.
They are incredibly bestial and predatorial creatures.
They barely talk.
That the 5e compares them essentially to they're just animals. They're just giant predators. They can still talk, but they rarely do so because they rarely find a reason to, other than to scare opponents. They have a very big hunter mentality about them which they just like stalk prey through the frostlands. They live in frostlands, and they have a cold breath attack, so they like breathe ice.
Yes, and they like eating frozen meat.
Yes,
and in their lairs they will have like, you know, in the cartoons where there's like ice surrounding like very old adventures or stuff that got stuck there and stuff. That is what they'll literally have in their lairs.
Like trophies.
They keep frozen trophies.
And another thing that feeds into that whole trophy aspect of them is they are massive grudge holders because they have exceptionally excellent memories.
Because
that is one thing that puts them a bit above animal instincts. Is that they will always, if you wrong them, they are going to remember your name forever. And dragons live like thousands of years, but they will always remember you, more so than other dragons.
One thing I think in my mentality that makes it work, that they don't really remember things and don't talk to people, is they just rarely talk to people, so they just remember every little slight.
Yeah,
they're just loners. They're just like the emo kid in the corner.
You escaped getting eaten by me? Enemy. are also very frustrated at being at the bottom of the dragon food chain, but they pride themselves in essentially being the top tier predator of Frostlands, being able to kill everything around them. They specifically seek out like challenging hunts to themselves to fight against.
Though if you do take it to a challenge and beat it, they will serve you.
Yeah, well, they'll serve you for a time. They'll look for ways to get it out of that. If you need to keep them subjugated, they have a lot of interactions with like frost giants about that. What? How do you even know what that is, Reed? Reed just said at like a Tarask.
No, the Tarasks aren't real. Don't worry about what's under the surface.
They have, like I said, sorry, I was in the middle of, they have a lot of interactions with like frost giants, where sometimes they'll subjugate frost giants, sometimes frost giants subjugate them. Frost giants are like Norse ice giants. And so a lot of storytelling elements, you can put white dragons into like Nordic tales or like Slavic tales. I have a really good plan for some ice dragons, for some white dragons, I mean, in this like Baba Yaga sort of Slavic witch thing that'll be coming later in this generation of our game. But they're really good for like any sort of what's that region? What would that region be called? Just like upper northern countryside stories. Yeah, Scandinavian, Slavics, Russian, stuff like that.
Russian.
But yeah, they. Let's see. Anything else that I had in the main
just
stuff?
Ice.
Oh yeah. So yeah, ice. Incredible opportunities with this dragon. A lot of dragons are really good because of the terrain they're given. So like this is for battle purposes, white dragons have incredible opportunities for like terrain tactics in the middle of the battle, especially since they have powers to like create ice barriers, fog, and also like spider climb on the ice. They can make like labyrinths of ice that they fight you in and stuff like that, which is really neat. I would say they have some of the best like terrain tactics of any of the dragons. So add on my white dragons. I like to make all of my dragons kind of ferocious and like good in all stats in all the elements. So I actually do make them a little more intelligent and charismatic and stuff. Actually, each of my dragons has 2 stats that they're exceptionally good at. So like White Dragon, it's Constitution. It's a lot heavier and like a lot more HP than a lot of dragons, which some stuff in 5e lends itself to. They at least have better Constitution than Black Dragons, I think. But I also give them a lot of Charisma, which seems weird for like a bestial creature. But the reason for that is that there are different kinds of charisma dragons in my world, and the way that white dragons use charisma in my world is they pour it all into intimidation tactics. So even when they are still good at like bluffing and diplomacy, but even in their bluffs and diplomacy, there's a fine line of like, you don't do this, I'm going to kill you. So yeah, they actually will talk to people, but only to like scare them more, essentially. Nice. So then we have our next chromatic dragon, which is the bronze dragon. Which
you mean metallic?
What's that?
Metallic?
Yeah, sorry, metallic dragon, which is the bronze dragon. I know some purists are about to yell at me and say that bronze is less powerful than copper, is more powerful than copper. But I will say, first of all, in my world, coppers are more powerful than bronzes. Also, in 3.5, they're about equal. In 5e, I think bronze is more powerful than copper. But that doesn't make sense. Like, I always thought, like, gold, silver, copper, they're the types of coins. Those should be the 3 most powerful metallic dragons. So, in my opinion, bronze should be lower than copper, especially since copper is badass. But, anyway, we'll talk about bronze now then. Bronze dragons are lawful good. There are 3 lawful good chromatics or metallics and 2 chaotic good. They have a strong sense of justice and like devote their lives essentially to hunting down pirates and sea beasts. This metallic dragon is the least I could find about any of the metallic dragons, or
Really?
any of the dragons in general.
These guys are like the nice guys of the sea.
Right, they're like they're the sea dragons, which I also put in yellow dragons into my world as the evil sea dragons. But the bronze dragons are like the sea dragons. They something I found interesting about them is because they're incredibly curious about other creatures and humanoids. They are the most likely dragon to find in a humanoid form.
Oh yeah,
essentially.
Also, in 5e, it says stories sometimes that they'll like polymorph into dolphins and go up to ships and then become a rat and go on the ships.
They don't really like to be in their dragon forms a lot.
No,
from what I can tell. They like to be close to humans, and like they will go into human societies as humanoids and never reveal themselves as dragons sometimes. Or they'll like disguise themselves as like old people or people who are down on their luck and like beg and like test people to see if they're good. And then if they're good, then those people never find out that it was a dragon. But if they're are mean to the old man facade, then he's like, all right, well, I'm a dragon, so you just screwed up. And then they have an electric breath attack. Like we said, they live in the water and coastal areas, and so they have like these. Oftentimes, their layers are like tidal layers, where like they are submerged when it's high tide, where they can go into their tunnel and come out on the other end, and then. On low tide, it gets revealed but then people can't climb up to it. Stuff like that. A lot of the layers are very hidden and have a lot of structure to them. I think the least hidden was the brass dragon, from what I could tell, because they don't really care about people coming and talk to them.
It's just buried. Talking, yeah.
They are the... let's see. They often something that I found like offsetting to the rest of their persona is they often participate in like wars, but they only do it to kind of study the wars and understand why wars are fought. Essentially,
are they like standing for something?
Their secondary breath attack is they have a repulsion gas, which just like they breathe it on someone and they're like feel this instinct to like. Get away from it. It's not really run away. It's not really a fear gas, so to speak. It's
is it just like this is disgusting?
Yeah, I don't know. It's
like
not really well described, but like it's just like forcibly. It's like a suggestion, sort of. Like you feel like you're supposed to go away from them. They can control waters and weathers at higher levels, which can essentially help them in like saving people from shipwrecks and stuff, which they usually do in disguise as a humanoid. It doesn't really say why necessarily, but I guess they just don't really like the attention. They can speak to animals as well, and they can breathe underwater. Add-on stuff, I don't have much yet in my world as to add-on stuff because I haven't really looked at... I'll be honest, I haven't really looked at Bronze Dragon as much as some of the other dragons. But, moving on to one of my favorite chromatic dragons, and one of my favorite dragons in general, the Black Dragon. The Black Dragon is this swamp dragon, and it has these two curled horns that essentially make it look like devil horns, and it has this like skull-visaged face as well. It's the most hideous looking and terrifying looking dragon, or at least from the perspective of like spooky sort of stuff.
Dragons.
I mean, I think if a red dragon came up to you, you'd technically be more scared of that, but this one looks the most haunting. It lives in swamp terrains. It likes the most fetid. Fetid? Is it? I don't know. And you're not going to correct me because I know you don't know. But fetid and like stinky swamplands.
Fetid.
Fetid, yeah. Thanks, Brad.
I know IPA.
And that is also one of the best terrain things, because like swamps are amazing for dragons, because like the black dragon can like wade in the water where no one can see it and like fold itself up so no one can see it, and then fly out as well and stuff like that. You have 3 dimensions to work with them without having to get your party in the air, essentially.
Oh, yeah.
And you guys are going to fight some black dragons soon.
Hey, they're half crocodile, okay?
Yeah, they're probably my second favorite of the chromatic dragons. They have acid breath in a line. They are generally very solitary creatures, which, I mean, that's kind of just speaking to the chromatics in general. A lot of them are very antisocial. But they are, to give them some credit, they are the most protective of their young, probably, of any of the chromatic dragons. They essentially never leave the nest. They usually get a mate and have them go hunt, and they just kind of hunt around the nest and like wait for people to come up to their nests and grab them to eat. They have this like great admiration for like reptiles in general. They like snakes and lizards and stuff. All of the different scaly creatures that come around their domain. They are the most cruel of the dragons, with which they do have the advantage, though, of being less proud than most dragons. A lot of the chromatic dragons can be undone by people essentially flattering them and like complimenting them, which won't like stop them from killing you, but at least can distract them for a little bit. That doesn't really work on black dragons, or at least nowhere near as well. They don't really have as big of an ego as other dragons. They just care about playing with their victims, essentially. Before I go on, you have anything to say on black dragons right now?
They are very spooky.
They're very spooky. They can charm reptiles in the area, essentially, which you should remember for when Jericho has his little buddy on his shoulder, his monitor lizard. They can corrupt the water around them and the area of land around them. And like poison water supplies around them, which is essentially what the dragon is doing that you guys are going to fight. They can cast darkness around themselves at later levels, and that's also a layer action of theirs in 5e. They torture both prey and minion alike. If they do have some sort of ensemble of hierarchy, they usually torment their own minions. Even.
Oh, yeah.
They're the cruelest of all the dragons. They're very manipulative, just evil-minded creatures. And even in my world, one of the least likely dragons to not be evil. But it does happen. But they are for add-on stuff, sort of. The main game doesn't really give a necessary tactic of how they are personality-wise in combat. In my game, I kind of split black dragons into 2 different categories. You either have a brute black dragon that's just like all savagery and focused on strength, or you have an incredibly intelligent, manipulative black dragon that's focused on more like experimentation and like other sorts of tactics, less physical stuff like spell casting and stuff like that. Which the one you guys are going towards right now is more focused on brute style, from what you can tell anyway. The copper dragons,
my favorite.
Your favorite?
Yeah.
Of the metallic, or like all in general?
All of them.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I can see that, because they're like the mischievous pranksters of
They're
dragon
the
kind.
prankster boys.
They're chaotic good. And they're essentially the bards of dragons.
They are.
Love storytelling. They love pranks. They love like rhyming and like riddles and all sorts of different things. They do have a little bit of a quick temper. They get really annoyed when people aren't impressed with their riddles, jokes, and stories. They generally don't go for like fighting evil as much as just like if they're in the same area as an evil person, they'll just like humiliate and taunt them.
Oh yeah.
And even when they're actually fighting to the death, they usually continue to humiliate and taunt their enemies until it gets really bad, and then they serious up a little bit.
Nah.
They are still very ruthless dragons. They're one of the most powerful metallic dragons. They have an acid breath. As I said, actually, I don't know if I said this, but they are the counter to black dragons, where black dragons have like evil pranks and like cruel experiments and stuff. Copper dragons are the good kind of pranks that don't really hurt anyone, and like they make fun of like humanoids for being like lowly and weak, and like make pranks that hurt that can make them fall over and stuff, but they don't really hurt anyone. They just enjoy making people laugh, and it's a good thing for like. They're really good sometimes, even in warfare, because like if you're laughing and having fun with these guys throughout the battle, you can't be afraid if you're laughing usually. So like, unless you're like nervous laughing out of fear, but no. They have earth powers. They can like shift rocks and stuff. They have a lot of earth elements about them. They also have like incredibly confusing layers, and it's actually a challenge between copper dragons to have the most confusing layers. Amongst them.
If adventurers want to come up to them and ask for treasures, he'll send them on a wild goose chase in his lair. Sometimes.
Right. Probably the easiest. Oh my gosh, I don't know what would be the easiest dragon treasure to find. But definitely not coppers.
No,
I was about to say brass, but they also put them in wherever they think of that day. So
I feel like copper dragons would have like so many joke entrances.
Yeah, exactly. They have their secondary breath attack is they have a cone of like slow gas, which like causes people to like move really slowly as they're going towards it. So that slows down the process and makes them able to get away without having to kill these stupid humans that dared to attack it. Moving on to my favorite dragon.
Your favorite dragon.
We have the next chromatic dragon, the green dragon.
They're pretty good.
Green dragons. They are... You remember how I said that chromatic dragons are the least social? Usually very antisocial. This one is one of the two chromatic dragons that is more social, and it uses this to be essentially master manipulators of everyone. They are incredibly intelligent and mentally capable dragons. They live in forests, and they like to corrupt and control lesser beings, and even like corrupt and control the nature around them too. They have a lot of natural powers. They love secrets and trading information with people. They are lawful evil, actually. I used to think they're chaotic evil, but the reason they're lawful evil is because they like to make a lot of deals and like find loopholes. And it's actually a challenge to them a lot of times to try and make a deal with someone and then find a way to betray them without breaking the deal. Which I think is really fun. Weird.
These are like the lawyers
mentality and creepy.
The lawyers of Dungeons and Dragons.
They make a lot of deals to safe harbor people for some sort of big price. Like they'll allow people passage across their land for prices that will come back maybe years later to haunt them. Like, hey, just give me the name of this person, this king or whatever, that later on you're going to be serving that king, and then the green dragon finds a way to like take control of that king and like kill you later on or something, and then therefore take over that kingdom. They value territory to an extent, but only for the like power it gives them over the people of that territory. They don't really care about the territory or land itself, if that makes sense, as much as who's in this territory that I can control. Do you have anything to say about green dragons before I go on?
They're in forest, and whenever they inhabit, there is like a fog that rolls over, which I think is really eerie and really nice.
Right, they have like this corrupting, like they're not really like pollution dragons. They kind of just are like they use the more gross parts of nature, like diseases and stuff, and poisons and stuff like that. Things that do attack nature sometimes, but are still natural. They're not outside forces.
Yeah. Do you think before we go on to the 4 most powerful dragons, we should play a couple of PSAs?
I'm not quite done with green dragons, but yes, yes, we will.
Okay.
They have a poison mist breath, essentially, in a cone that essentially melts people, and it can be... In 5e, it's actually an acidic mist, so it's acid damage. Or no, it's poison damage, my bad. But in 3.5, it's acidic mist. So in my world, I've kind of combined the two and made it poison damage, but if you're immune to poison, it switches over to acid. Because I love green dragons.
True, that's mean.
Yeah.
It's very mean.
They layer in like... their layers and like areas around them, like all of the forest obeys their commands, and they gain abilities eventually to like take control over plants, and also they have a lot of abilities to like charm and like dominate human beings and other sentient creatures as well. They're the most political of dragons. For mine, I only did a small add-on for my world, which is that they They obey the laws of nature, essentially. And it's hard to explain that in a quick blurb, so I'll just let that be up to interpretation. Yep. We're back, sorry.
We are back.
Typing.
Typing.
So our next metallic dragon, we're getting into the big boys now. I mean, they're all...
Big boys.
They're dragons. They're all big, but...
dragons are big?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, no.
Okay.
You thought they were just like pixie size.
I mean,
right?
like pseudo-dragons.
Right.
Really cute.
Not a true dragon.
Oh.
Silver dragon. Silver dragons are kind of like the counter of white dragons in terms of like physical stuff, because they have a cold breath. They live in frostlands.
Well, also they are the opposite to them socially, kind of.
I guess.
I've read in 5e. Apparently, they're the ones that spend the most time in like humanoid form, like get to know humans.
Yeah, I read that bronzes are, but silver dragons do get to know humans a lot, though. So they're lawful good, and they have a secondary breath attack of paralyzing gas. So we've moved beyond just slowing someone down now. Instead, we're just going to breathe, and you're stopped. You can't go any further.
Stop. Get some help.
They are able to control the winds and weather, and have later levels they also get the ability to reverse gravity, which is really cool. The reverse gravity spell, unfortunately, is limited by the fact that you need to be in a room. You can't just make them go up into the air.
Hey, layers. Layers are great.
Yeah, they have the reverse gravity spell at later levels, and they are the like masters of the sky. They are dominators of the sky. They can create like cloud walkways essentially as well that are like solid. They're really cool in the sky, which makes them kind of hard to fight if you ever wanted to fight a silver dragon, like in a campaign, because they are always going to be in the sky no matter what you do. They don't really have any limitation that stops them from just staying in the sky. They focus on unlike some other of the dragons, like bronze dragons who hunt down like sea evils, and like gold dragons who also hunt down on a lot of evils. Silver dragons are more focused upon like protecting good rather than rooting out and like crusading against evil. They're a little bit paladin, and like there's two different archetypes of paladin. So like, I read somewhere that are kind of the paladins of dragons. I'd say that silver and gold kind of emblemize the two different types of paladins.
I'd
they're
have
both
to agree.
Kind of the paladins of dragons, but they focus on protection of the good. They live in high. That's totally off topic of what I was talking about, but my next note is they live in high mountains. Cool.
Okay.
Frosty mountains. They don't care much about hierarchy, which is weird for a lawful creature, but they focus more focusing on good deeds that an individual does than a structure or a kingdom or anything like that. A kingdom of good. They get attached because they are so protective. They get attached to specific. They get attached to specific families and towns. But because they have to do a lot of things, they oftentimes will leave and then come back to the next generation because dragons live so long, and continue to protect that family or that land for years to come.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot I could find. There wasn't a lot I could find on silver dragons.
Yeah, they're more boring than most dragons.
They used to be my favorite metallic dragon. I still like them better than another dragon. There's only one dragon of the metallics and chromatics that I even somewhat dislike, and I still like it fairly well. But we'll get to it later.
We'll get to it.
Add-ons, I don't have a lot for silver dragons because though they're simplistic, I actually think they're kind of perfect. There doesn't really need to be a lot more to them at this point, in my world even. Yeah. Blue dragons.
Can I just say how much I love their aesthetic?
Yeah.
So blue dragons, they're in deserts and they burrow all the time.
Yeah,
and
they essentially just burrow into sand dunes and hang out under there, sunbathing, keeping cool from the heat. But then they also like to sunbathe.
No, they like going into the sand, and then all they have is their singular horn sticking up,
right.
And then something
they
comes.
Have a singular horn. So if ever you're adventuring in a D&D game and see a dune with a singular horn sticking out of it, don't bother that dune.
What do you mean?
Leave that dune alone.
What do you mean? Just go say hi. You won't get got.
No, leave it alone. They are lawful evil. They are the other chromatic dragon that is very much socially oriented because they have they are the most focused on hierarchy of all the dragon types. They build these mafioso empires essentially under them. They're big mafia bosses, sort of. But they also keep very mysterious. They have a lot of powers over illusions and ventriloquism and disguising themselves. So they kind of keep them. Sometimes they keep themselves entirely secret to a population that they're a blue dragon and they're controlling this mob that's controlling the city. So if you're in a desert city and there's a mob with a mysterious leader of it, it's probably a blue dragon and you shouldn't mess with him.
Or do mess with him.
Otherwise, they're just voracious bullies to everyone around them. They're big, just bullies. Yeah. They have a lightning breath attack, which I think they're the cooler of the lightning breath dragons between them and bronze in many ways. At least in terms of lightning usage. They're more mocking and manipulative than cruel and murderous as other dragons. That doesn't mean they won't murder you, but they will more likely just humiliate you in a really bad way. I can't really describe it.
Okay.
But, sorry. I couldn't really come up with an example on the spot for some of these things, but they don't like to murder their people a lot of times because if you murder the people, who are you going to lord your magnificence over? They are good for use in I guess desert adventures.
So have you ever played Monster Hunter?
Yeah.
I just can keep on picturing you're out in a sea of sand and there's just this burrowing dragon, and it makes
they make their layers essentially under the ground. They need to literally burrow through the sand to get to them, so no one else can get to them.
Yeah, it's great.
They are exceptionally proud and territorial. A lot of the dragons are obviously very proud, but blue dragons are more so than most. So they can maybe be distracted by compliments and stuff. I'm gonna be honest. And this is not me saying I don't like blue dragons, because I really like blue dragons, but they're probably my least favorite of the chromatics now, as of recent. And the only reason for that is because they don't really have theme necessarily to them that they can attach to. Like even like Egyptian, you can't. Blue dragons don't really work well with Egyptian stuff. I mean, they can if you work it well, but like just the base blue dragon doesn't really work well with
I feel like
particular
it
theme
would be
of adventure.
Good with like traveling folks in a desert, like a trading company kind of.
Yeah, but that's the problem. Is like. Blue dragons would be a great thing if you're just like wandering through the desert and they attack, but they really are solitary. They usually have like these empires that they build up, and it's like I don't know how you insert that empire into your storyline. I guess, and if you're doing a traditional D&D game, at least in our world, anything can happen. Yeah. We do tons of different weird stuff. But
in 5e, I don't think they go too much into controlling things.
Right.
As much. That's more green dragons.
Well, in my world, they're even more so obsessive about like strict order. Like even like a lot of lawful evil creatures will be fine with like two entities having a power struggle between them in the orders, which blue dragon is okay with too in some sense. But like for other lawful evil creatures, it's fine if you like do that within the law and someone comes out on top. But even if they don't know about it, if someone comes up and says, "Yeah, I'm in this position now," they're fine with that because it's like, "Okay, you're the more powerful. I respect that. You're my guy." Blue dragons, no. You have to have strict order. I need to be there to witness the thing that put you on top. If you're gonna have a power struggle, I need to know about it. I need to know about everything in my empire. There's nothing that can escape my grasp.
That sounds great.
Essentially. And then we move on to my least favorite dragon of the main dragons.
Fair.
The gold dragon, which is the most powerful of the metallic dragons. They're very aloof dragons. They're all-knowing and wise. They are based physically upon like Oriental type dragons, with a little bit of Western flair in that they have fully formed wings and have all 6 limbs. But because of that, they have this very aloof and pompous nature to them that just is, especially for a good thing, is boring from a storytelling perspective because you can't really fit them into a story and make them have any sort of flaws. I like things to have flaws and stuff. It's a lawful good creature. It's weird because it simultaneously goes and fights evil wherever it can find it, and also kind of is solitary and stays in one place and guards sacred areas. Mm-hmm. It goes one or the other, or both, somehow. And not to say I don't like gold dragons. I think they can be modeled well in some ways. All of the dragons can be used well. Almost all monsters in D&D can be used well. No matter how stupid looking or stupid sounding they are, they can probably be used well, except for Moondog from Pathfinder. But anyway, moving on.
What's up now?
Moving on. They because they're based on like Oriental stuff, they're obviously put into like Oriental storytelling in themology. If you want to do that in your world, part of the reason I don't like them is the Orient and the Eastern like culture of mythology is very based on like gods and humans are kind of equal, and they're all looking for transcendence, which is very adverse to like Western mythology, which is why gold dragons are so different from everything, because they're based on Eastern mythologies, and so they have this very transcendent nature, like they're searching for all the answers, and it's just boring in game. Like as a story in like a book per se, it's a good thing to like have this gold dragon that you can go and talk to and get all the wisdom you need from. But from a role-playing game perspective, it's not really that interesting in game.
I think it would be really fun to have like a gold dragon that was convinced that someone else is evil by a green dragon.
That's a great idea, Bradley.
Yeah,
that's terrific. They live anywhere but like secluded places. They often live on plains that are just like expansive plains that nothing is around in. where they just sleep in the middle of grasslands. They have beautifully decorated lairs, usually in caves, which I don't know how they find a lot of caves in a savanna, but whatever. That's about it. They're very reclusive, and which makes them like of mythic level because you rarely ever see a gold dragon.
I have a dumb detail about them.
What?
Their favorite food are pearls and gold.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah.
In 5e? Yeah. That's not healthy.
They're gold dragons.
That's also very economic drink.
They're gold dragons.
Draining.
They're made of gold.
Mechanics-wise, they also have abilities of like divination and stuff, which makes them even more like you're a god at this point. Why are you in a game as something I can possibly fight? And they also have a secondary breath attack that's like a strength draining breath attack that essentially cripples any fighter before they can even raise a sword against it. Adding ons in my world, I haven't really gotten around to adding a lot to gold dragons. This is one where I probably will add some different elements to it to make it a little more interesting.
You want to know what I think would be pretty fun?
What?
If you gave them some anger issues.
Like red dragons?
Yeah.
In my world? Yeah. Moving on to red dragons.
Oh, they're so good.
Now, red dragons, the most powerful of the chromatic dragons on our last Dragon's Day, I will admit, used to be my least favorite of the chromatic dragons.
These are like the classics.
Recently, I've been getting more into smog and stuff. I'll get into why I used to dislike the red dragons as we go on in this. But like the red dragon is essentially your quintessential dragon. They are the most proud and destructive of the dragons. They're chaotic evil. They have this vicious fire breath attack that's the most powerful in the game, except for maybe the gold dragon, at least in 5e, because the good dragons need to be more powerful than the evil dragons.
Lame.
Yeah, but in my world, they're equal in power. Honestly, in terms of extra mechanics, it has kind of the most useless extra mechanics, at least in combat terms. It does have the very helpful ability of essentially being able to find any person it knows the name of or any object, because it has a locate person and then locate object and stuff like that, where it can just track people down to the ends of the earth. Obviously, they're fire-breathing dragons, so they are the quintessential dragons that live in volcanoes and like very volcanic environments, particularly in high, hot mountains and stuff. They also have basic suggestion abilities over people, which isn't quite as good as like the green dragons dominating of people. They don't really have a lot of good mechanics for battle, except for obviously their vicious physical attacks and fire breath. And also all dragons can possibly learn spellcasting, but whatever.
One thing that I love about red dragons is if you go into like stories about dragons, like knights slaying dragons, these are the stereotypical, just evil red dragons.
Right. They're like the quintessential dragon of folklore. Like they're the European dragon that destroys everything in its path and is destructive and is the embodiment of ruin, death, destruction, fire, all of that. Which I used to not be for, because like I feel like fire is too I guess I felt like fire was too mainstream, and I still kind of feel like that. I like the other elements better. But I thank you, Reed. That was what I was going to mention. I've recently got into like smog and stuff, and like some of the more like interesting fire dragons. Like Smog is really cool. That's probably the best part of the Hobbit movies. I actually like the Hobbit movies okay, but definitely the best part of them, the part that puts them above everything else, is Smog was incredible in the movies, and he's incredible in the book as well. Smog is the dragon.
Yeah.
Right. You haven't seen any Lord of the Rings or Hobbit.
I've seen one Hobbit movie.
I forget that. But yeah. It's
Yes.
I also picture there's this dragon in World of Warcraft that essentially just one wing beat literally shatters bridges from the heat that's coming off of it. His name is I just read this earlier today. Deathwing, which is a terrible name.
Deathwing. Yeah, that boy.
But yeah,
he did a lot.
They're incredibly destructive and powerful dragons. My sticking point with them, even in main game, even to this day, is their mentality. Like, all they care about is ruin, destruction, and death. And it's very single-minded and not very interesting from a standpoint of roleplay. Like, I like all of my dragons to have all my dragons and all my enemies to kind of have a reason for the things they're doing. If they're good villains, they have a reason for the things they're doing. They have kind of a deeper mentality than just, I'm evil, I'm gonna kill everything. And so, in my world, red dragons have a more interesting personality trait, where actually they start off fairly good-minded, but they have like huge emotions. Essentially, they have extreme rages, extreme happiness, and extreme like down periods, where like they will go into a rage essentially, and like they're trying to help a town, and like one little thing sets them off into a rage, and they like destroy the entire town. And like when they do that, a red dragon kind of goes into this long depressive period where they're like, what have I become? Like, and then they just are like, well, I guess I have to be evil now. And they become evil because they just can't control their emotions. They just destroy everything they touch, and it's kind of tragic, really, in my world. And because of that, red dragons are also oftentimes subject to going insane, essentially. And it's probably the dragon you most often find go insane rather than just be insane. Like, black dragons are kind of insane, but no.
I would call them more psychopathic.
Yeah.
Like,
probably.
they just don't care.
But that is the dragons. I have there are a lot more dragons throughout the history of D&D, and I've put a lot of them into my world as well. From chromatics, you have like yellow and orange and purple and brown. Purple is sometimes called deep, and gray. From metallics, you have like mercury, stuff like, and others like that. In my world, it's mercury, orium, mithril, adamantine, and cobalt are the other types of dragons. Yeah, they're cool. They're like underground dragons that like foster like underground terrariums of like terrariums and arboreums of life. But yeah. Yeah, I have a lot of extra dragons, and I would encourage you to expand the dragon lore as well as a dungeon master if you seek to do that. But yeah, that is the core of D&D. The best part of D&D, in my mind, is the dragons, because they're awesome. And like, unlike in Skyrim or a lot of other games, they're actually intimidating in most regards. Yeah. They can the young adult dragons can destroy towns outright. Like, they are incredibly powerful. Dragons can literally go into other planes of existence, like the fire elemental plane, and tap into the plane and literally use all the power of the plane against another thing. They can become gods, they can become Dracoliches, stuff like that. There's so much capabilities to dragon. They're incredibly versatile enemies in D&D, and they're perfect. They're amazing. Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm getting old. Yeah. I love dragons.
Dragons are great.
But yeah.
This has basically been the first season.
Yeah, this has basically been the first season. We will be coming back.
Yeah?
We will be coming back. Not sure when. Not sure if it'll be at the same exact time. We're going to try
to get the same figure out what's happening.
But yeah, we'll have a new schedule for what we're going to talk about, and it'll be grand, and you'll get to hear more of us. We do have a Facebook page, by the way, if you want to check that out, D&D with B&D. The with is just a W and then a slash mark. Yeah. So keep that in mind when looking it up. It's D&D with B&D on WCCX. Yeah. So cool.
Yeah.
We hope to see you guys more. This has been D&D with B&D, saying a lot to nobody on WCCX Waukesha 104.5 FM.
Happy holidays.